So let me take this opportunity to welcome everybody to our session today, and particularly Sunshine Komusana, who is going to be our speaker today. So Sunshine is speaking to us today from where she's sitting in Kampala in Uganda. She works for an organization called Whose Knowledge, a women's campaigning organization. So Sunshine has been very active in the African feminist movement and has got a vast experience and expertise working on women's reproductive health, advocacy. She provides legal aid and conducts research and a lot more. And she has a fantastic CV. She's an alumna of the African Women's Leadership Institute and the African Feminist Macroeconomic Academy. So we're celebrating Women's History Month, and so we're really delighted to welcome Sunshine. So she's going to be talking to us today about how can technology and digital innovation strengthen women's voices. So welcome, Sunshine, you're very welcome, and thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Janet. Thank you so much, Lena. Thank you, everybody at the hub is what I'm going to say, because I don't want to butcher the rest of it. The World's Africa Project, like I like to describe it. I am really delighted to be here, and thank you for asking me to speak. I like talking, so it's always a pleasure. And I'm asked if I can do it. I've been introduced. My name is Sunshine Fionah Komusana. I am an African feminist lawyer and activist. I'm retiring from activism, but for now, still an activist. And I work with Whose Knowledge. Whose Knowledge is a global feminist campaign to center the knowledge of marginalized communities, especially online. Our work is steeped around decolonizing the internet and ensuring that the internet languages and content and images are representative of the majority of the world, who are also the majority of the people on the internet. And yeah, I'm very excited to speak to us today, and I'm happy to start. Janet, do you want me to share my screen, or do you want to share the slides? Okay, so maybe, yes. I wanted us to start from a fun place, you know, something participatory. So the second slide. And my ask is that we all go to, www.menti.com, put in that code, and just in a word or sentence, describe or write what technology innovation represent for you. Sometimes more accessible, wide reach, future, change, still dominated by men, opportunity, modernity. All my answers, everything I wanted to say, you have already shared in this. So I feel like this is going to be a quick conversation. So thank you so much for participating. I will now begin saying more words. And I will start, yes, with this beautiful image. The next slide, slide 3, yes. This is beautiful, right? So I put together a collage of many African women, many African feminists. Some of these pictures were taken by us at Whose Knowledge for the Visible Wiki Women campaign. And some of them I got from the internet of places. And this is just because we are celebrating Women's Month, women in tech, women in tech and innovation. I wanted to share, just really bring into the room all the amazing African women that are doing incredible things around tech and innovation, human rights for women on the internet. And just really, as I continue speaking, I'll be referring to some of them and some of their work, and just right at the what corner? I confuse my left and right. Just right in some corner is Timnit Gibril, who is an amazing African feminist AI expert who is challenging the use of large machine learning models and misogyny and racism within big tech. In the middle, we have Sandra Kwikiriza, who is wearing that African map as a necklace, who is an African feminist founder of an organization in Uganda called Her Internet, which is around digital human rights for women and also lesbian, queer, and other minoritized women. We have Aria in the top right. Is this right or left? Trying to figure it out. In the top left corner on my end, who is a trans activist from Kenya, doing amazing work on bringing knowledge of indigenous knowledges of trans and queer people in Africa. Then we have this amazing woman wearing a helmet, who is part of the Market Garden app, which is an app created by Ugandan market women that's about connecting vendors and sellers and farmers and different stakeholders within the food chain, within the markets. And all of these other amazing women. We have Caro Charisima in the middle there, who is teaching girls how to code in Tanzania. We have Nima. Nima is a co-founder of, founder of Policy, which is a feminist tech advocacy organization. So many of them, I don't want to belabor talking about all of their stories, but most of their stories are also online and have been captured. And then we have this poster of the one that with the yellow in the background with 5 Nigerian feminists who are the founders of Feminist Coalition. So just really trying to bring and celebrate and bring that spirit and energy and of all the amazing women and non-binary people that are doing incredible work around innovation and tech and gender justice and equality. So yeah, power to them. And next slide, please. So when I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking around the theme, obviously, for International Women's Day this year, which is our own digital, I think digital, I think is the hashtag, innovation and technology for gender equality. And it was also in line with the recently concluded Commission on the Status of Women, the big meeting in New York on gender equality, which was also on innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for gender equality. And so I thought, okay, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with tech and innovation. As a feminist, and especially as an African feminist who lives on the margins of different forms of oppression, and also knowing that tech and the tools that allow us to access tech and the infrastructure around that is not really created with us in mind. I have a love-hate relationship. So I appreciated the person who said when they think about tech, it represents a blessing and a curse. But I wanted to start from a place of positive and just really a nod to technology in terms of how it offers and how it is for gender equality. Equality, justice, equity. I want to use those words interchangeably because I don't think we'll see equality in our lifetime, at least not in mine. But I think we can continuously contribute to efforts around gender equity and justice, right? So what are some of those ways where we can see tech and innovation as a contributor or as a friend or as a blessing? So one of those things is expansion of space for women's voices to be heard. The way I met the team at Wells Africa project, like I like to call it, was through Beth reaching out and asking if I wanted to be a part of a podcast conversation around, violence against women and responses around that. I don't even remember what we talked about. All I remember is the conversation was around how do we support work around violence against women. And in that conversation, I met another amazing African woman who does work, I think, in Lesotho or Swaziland, one of those two. So when you think around women's voices, voices of people who are historically marginalized, most times they are excluded from mainstream media, from platforms, from panels, from spaces, in the mainstream. But tech and innovation have created space. I listen to so many podcasts I can't even keep up, of different women talking from reproductive rights to economic justice to macroeconomic policy to just the curse of being online. Women are able to amplify their voices and have alternative spaces for speech, for expression. And in that sense, it continuously, and in most cases, once a conversation, for instance, I'm going to use social media as a proxy. Once a conversation on social media has taken off, you'll find that then maybe it's picked up within the mainstream, and in that way able to visibilize the issues that are being talked about. In another space, gender equality, tech provides space and possibilities for work and business. A lot of us, I would use the example of the women within Nakawa market who are innovated around an app to connect to buyers, and from that really is you can say that it takes a certain kind of tech working for women, for them to be able to innovate and create and also utilize. And the interesting thing about this app is it was launched, I think, just before the pandemic in 2019. And in a sense, the women within that market were ready to be able to trade online, move their entire business models online, just because when lockdowns were instituted and things like that. So, and not just that in terms of business, but marketing in general. When you think about the number of growing businesses online, not that costs of data are not a problem, but many young women's businesses that are online have reduced, don't have to incur as much operational costs when it comes to rent, licenses, things like that. You just open an Instagram shop. I buy a lot of my clothes from Instagram, if I must say so myself. And I make it a point to only buy from women, just as a political stance. So I think in that sense, yes, as well. So also, when you think around technology as a venue for organizing, for community, I want to refer to the feminist coalition, but also the different feminist movements that have organized purely online to march against gender-based violence, from the Women's March in Uganda to the total shutdown in Kenya, to the Women's March in Zambia, total shutdown in South Africa, the protests in Sudan, all across Africa, almost all the organizing around responses and bringing attention to issues around femicide, around gender-based violence has been done purely online. And also, finally, as a space for sharing our joy, tech and innovation allows for that to happen. So when you think around our history, we do a lot of work at Whose Knowledge around bringing, our histories, our different histories into the context of our work. A lot of our stories have been erased from history. A lot of stories of women have been erased from history. But technology now and innovation allows us to document our resistance, but also our joy in real time, whether it's about contributing to a conversation, and you have your friend take a picture of you while you're on a panel, and so that, you know, people don't come and say women don't know what to say about around issues, or whether it's about being able to create a platform for women to just experience their joy and document that by taking pictures and sharing them. The Visible Wiki Women campaign is about bringing images, as many images of women and non-binary people, especially from the global south, to Wikimedia and Wikimedia Commons, so that the internet is as representative of us, as representative as the diversity of us that exist in the world. So I think in that sense, tech is definitely for gender equality. And I'm sure there are other examples, there are other ways, but let's go talk about the problems, right? Next slide, please. So technology innovation against gender equality, equity, and justice. You can see these ones I highlighted in bold. We like problems. We like amplifying them so that we can garner support for advocacy, but also to say, to go back to the person who said technology is both a blessing and a curse. So tech and innovation are not a silver bullet to achieving, I'm sorry for using military language, to achieving gender equality. I know that it has been, you know, propped and shown to be this cure. You know, the UN is talking about, you know, technology, including women being part of the Sustainable Development Goals, including women in tech, girls in STEM, supporting all of those things. And those things really have value, but also we have to remember that there are other underlying issues around tech and innovation that then create, exacerbate or even increase and amplify and create more barriers for women. And so some of those things are, like I said, the potential and digital transformation. It can accelerate gender equality and gender justice, and our work towards that, and our support towards, for those of us who are supporting different projects. But there's repetition and exacerbation of deep inequalities and violence. So there is a lot of work that's being done around curbing technology facilitated violence against women and girls, or violence that specifically targets women through the internet. Just to share like our own examples in Uganda, like the amount of harassing and like online bullying that we experience because you have taken a political stance or a feminist stance against an issue. And many other young people are experiencing that kind of violence. You become a target of bullying, of trolling, but also threats around rape and all kinds of violences. But that's not just the violence that happens online on social media in that regard, but also knowing the ways in which you know, men or like male dominated the tech space is, and the tech and innovation space. It means that women are again trailing behind around innovation, around access to opportunities, around access to space, around access to even the tools, the gadgets, access to, because of, I want to make this correlation around unpaid care work, because women are mostly the one doing unpaid care work. They have less time to actually spend online, and there are studies towards that. So in that sense, tech and innovation can exacerbate, and also just so many other numerous things that we can talk about, are things around how tech and innovation contribute to climate change, and how women, especially women in Africa, on the receiving end of like the worst of climate change, and things that are really also related to the larger macro level. Why am I saying macroeconomics? But the macro level, things around data infrastructure. Who owns data infrastructure? What are they doing with that data and privacy and information online? Last year we wrote a piece around period tracking apps and the backlash that women are are experiencing for having their data on period tracking apps, in light of the fact that there is a regression in reproductive health, reproductive rights across the globe. So things like that can really be bring many issues that but also erasure and visualization. Now, because more of us are writing, more of us are producing, it's also easy to access our information without credit. You will find so many times people will take your pictures without your consent and they put them online, or you find a paragraph of something you wrote and put online in someone's essay without any credit to you. So those are some of the things. But good news, there is a little bit of, so I'm just going to talk a bit about solutions and then I will stop talking. I've been talking for so long. So last slide, please. Second last, I think. So what are the emerging feminist solutions exist to those problems? So how can technology be a partner in the work towards gender equality and justice? So they are micro and multi and macro, like they are multiple, issues are very intertwined. So it's hard to say, you solve one tech issue and you've solved all of them, or you solve one issue around innovation, because most of them, as we have said, are interlinked. It's linked to climate justice, it's linked to reproductive health, it's linked to privacy, it's linked to policy. So some of those things are, so in a micro sense, when we talk about supporting women and supporting women projects, women to be able to utilize or to not compete is the wrong word, to also be part of the tech and innovation space. One of the ways is access. So to tools, to devices, to the internet. I live in Uganda and I like to think I have a certain degree of privilege, but the costs of internet are insane. So when we think around being able to support women, being able to support them with the tools, even in terms of literacy and digital skills and all of those things, but also the actual tools like phones and tablets and laptops. But then there are also layers around like access to electricity. So being able to support work that looks at the whole issue is one of those ways. And there's many feminists, many projects, many people who are doing work around this, so to be able to support them to continue to do that work. The other thing is feminist tech policy advocacy around that. I come from an advocacy background, activist background, so I'm always looking for what can we be able to influence in terms of protection of women online, protection of our data, of their privacy, protection of their protection, but also in terms of ensuring that technology doesn't cause more harm to their lives, to their livelihoods, but also to their environment. So then finally, the knowledge and tech justice work that I am a part of, that we are a part of, and that is ensuring that we bring knowledges of marginalized people, knowledges of women, stories of women, images of women, just also within the space that all of this development work around technology and innovation is happening, and ensure that their voices are heard. So those are my many words. So thank you so much for listening. I'm happy to take some feedback, some questions. Don't make them difficult questions. I am not an expert on innovation and tech, but yeah, thank you so much for listening to me. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sunshine. Oh, wow, that's fantastic and really so interesting. And we really admired your passion and enthusiasm as well. So I'll open up the floor to questions. I think, was that Julian putting your hand up, or was that a clap, Julian?
It was a clap, actually. But I'm quite happy to ask a question.
Yeah, go on then.
If that would kick things off. Thank you for that. That was really, really interesting. I'd be particularly interested to know, I suppose, what you think is the role of Wales Africa partnerships and how organisations in Wales, individuals in Wales can help.
Okay, thank you. I like this question. Um, I think I don't have a good understanding of the kinds of like projects and communities that you're doing, that Wells Africa project, of Africa projects, what they look like. But for me, as a person on the receiving end of project work, I would say usually the first thing is to be able to like listen to the people that these projects, for example, are targeting, and also just make the project making process participatory, so that then solutions are coming from the people. Because the experience around project work is that ultimately, after like the project period, 2-3 years, or depending on the kind of resourcing or the model also of the project, is like the project will come to an end, and you want to be able to ensure that it's like the people that this project is intended to support are a part of the process, so that then it's able to sustain and also speak to and respond to their needs. So instead of just creating projects for people just to be able to bring people in at the inception or at the thinking stage of projects, but also, like I mentioned, in terms of providing tools, providing access, providing resources, teaching, and also just knowing that they also hold knowledge and hold experience that is valuable to their context, that we can also learn from, that you can also learn from as someone who is coming in to work with them. So I think that would be my that would be my response in that regard. But just talk to the people, bring them on board, and just being able to have that exchange of learning and knowledge.
Thank you so much. So would anybody else like to ask a question? Yes, is that Sarah? Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Fionah, thank you so much for your brilliant presentation. I could, the presentations you watch, and you know the person is reporting, but your enthusiasm is so contagious, and I thank you so much for that, because I know it's not easy. And my question is related to probably a very recent happening in Uganda. I don't know if everyone is aware, but 2 days ago, I was made aware that Uganda has just passed an act criminalizing, any identification, whether you identify as a binary person or queer, or whether you are a media house promoting people who are not subscribing to conventional genders. I mean, when this was shared, our colleague, our classmate, who's the head of UN Women in Southern Africa, went online and responded to that. But my question to you, Sunshine, I see the strength of the women who are able to live out their gender as they identify themselves. And I saw on your photo, I just came on late, sorry, some women who are non-binary. Now, my question is back to IT. Are you going, or do you have in place, or have you thought of some ways of promoting the work, but a data protection that means that those women are not directly identifiable? Because there are ways someone can identify that person and where they're speaking at the moment by tracking. We use it in intelligence and criminal work. But I'm just wondering, what is the reaction on the ground? Do you think it will affect your advocacy work?
Thank you so much, Professor Sarah. Oh yeah, I am aware of that law, and I have never been called to so many meetings since the last 2 days. Most of them to really just find ways to create community of care and support, especially for people who already publicly identify as LGBTI. It's not our first rodeo. This law was passed in 2014, and it was struck out by the Constitutional Court, I think, in 2018 or 2019, and it's back. So one of the things I want to first say is this is not like an isolated case. There's a renewed wave of homophobia, like we like to call it, across Africa. We've seen targeting for our sisters in Zambia after they organized the Women's March. We've seen targeting in Kenya. We've seen targeted violences in Ghana. And really a lot of it is coming from a very central place, which is Christian fundamentalists, really. They have time. And so I think that one of the things that for me I have been doing personally is to just reach out to as many of the community that I know in terms of asking what the needs are. There's conversations around protection, around asylum, around just really getting people to stay alive right now. Then also conversations around trying to do advocacy to ensure that the president doesn't assent to it, or if he does, then there is like already the case being built to be able to take it to the Constitutional Court. So that is what's happening in terms of like response and reaction, but people are definitely scared. And I hear you around not the data protection. All of the images that, most of the images I shared are images we have already uploaded in Wikimedia Commons with consent. But I know with this new wave, for some of them are Ugandan, others aren't. Some people, we have actually had some people reach out and say, take my name out of a report, take my quote out, because, and yes, we are, and that's work that we are doing actively to be able to protect people. And so, yeah, I think it's really just still all up in the air, and we are creating as much resources as we can with the context that we have. And there are many other people that have put resources around like rapid response, urgent action, and things like that. But I also don't speak for everyone's experience. I have the privilege where I know that I even if I needed to run, maybe I could. So I know that for many people, it's just really trying to figure out what's the best way to survive while we figure out how we fight. And so, yeah, that's my very raw answer, considering that this is very fresh information. But thank you for asking and caring.
Just one tip. I trained some people in Mexico on how to, simple ways you can untick some things on your phone so that people can't trace you, your location and so on. And just for vulnerable and intimidated people, I'll email you later on that. Let me give others the opportunity, but thank you. I just wanted to encourage you to know that you're not alone. I'm joining from Somalia, but I'm Kenyan.
Oh, thank you.
Born in Uganda.
You sound Kenyan. Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that very timely question. It's something that has really come to the fore in these last few days, and it's important to raise it and really throw a spotlight on that. So thank you as well, Sunshine. There's a question in the chat from Tawera Luhanga. The question is, in your view, what is or what should be the position of men in the feminism discourse?
All right. Thank you for asking, Tawera. I don't want to speak for feminists because I know many feminists feel differently about this. But for me, I think that first of all, men need to, it's really not a need, but I think it's supposed to be like an interrogation of like power and masculinity, and the ways in which if you are a man, either as an individual or as a collective that belongs to a system of oppression, which is patriarchy, you contribute to that system or benefit or perpetrate harm. So I think for me, it has to come from a place first of interrogation of the ways in which you are a benefactor of a patriarchal system, and then doing the lifelong work of undoing that, which sometimes would mean ceding space. I like to ask some of my friends when they're on panels, which we call manos in Uganda, where they are all men. I'm like, you saw the list of speakers and there were 3 men. Why did you say yes, right? To being on that panel as well, just ceding space so that there are other voices, that voices of women can be. Sometimes it means not speaking at all, especially when, conversations around lived experiences of women are coming up and you don't have all the information. I'll just give an example. I am in a coalition around access to safe abortion. Also, the policy environment around access to safe abortion is very, very narrow. And so we're trying to do work around that. And in most cases, you will go in a meeting and it will be very masculine centering. And so in a context like that, like it's important that then you continuously interrogate why your voices are the ones that are being heard. The other thing is, men are the ones in most times who have the resources resources in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of access to opportunity, and so just being able to redistribute to work towards gender justice. So I think, and also being able to call your folks in, because men listen to men. I mean, I will scream about violence against women for 10 years, and then someone will come and say, oh, let's bring men to this conversation, and then all of a sudden all men are listening and saying, yeah, that's a problem. So being able to call out your community of men around, issues of harm and gender inequality and things like that. I think there's like a laundry list. I mean, if a man asks me what, I'll be like, just give up your paycheck if you're participating in a gender pay gap. As in, there are so many practical things. But I think that it starts from a place of interrogating your own power, your own privilege, how you perpetuate harm, and just really doing the work of unlearning and just not centering yourself and your voices, especially in spaces where, you could cede the space. So yeah, that's my very diplomatic response to your question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Sunshine. Yes, I think it's very, sorry, there's some noise in the background here. Thank you very much. And I think we really appreciate that, there are many layers to that question. So are there any other questions from any other attendees? I have a question, if I may. Do you, you talked about access, you mentioned about men having access to resources, and earlier you talked about, some of the solutions about access to devices and access to the internet. Do you have any data about the gender gap between access to the internet, for example, in Uganda or in Africa as a whole, compared to women?
That's an interesting question, because I think I saw, like in my preparation for this, I think I saw certain statistics around that. let me just check my notes quickly, but I know for there's a report from 2019, I think that was done by the UN around I think, let me try and I can share it maybe a bit later, around just like the gender like digital divide, and saying that, you know, I think 21% more men are 21% more men are online than women. But also just thinking around, this is not steeped in data, just in like theory and like feminist theory around gender pay gaps, and knowing that data in like our context is access to the internet and data and devices and smartphones is something you can only access if you have luxury, no, a degree of luxury or a degree of disposable income that then you can, and knowing how less paid women are, less women are able to then access data. I think there's conversations during the pandemic when people were saying, oh, just move your businesses online, and women in Uganda were saying we have to debate between buying a data bundle and buying food for our children. And obviously in that comparison, there so more, because more men have resources in terms of money and also more time, because they are not doing a lot of the unpaid care work, like taking care of children, nurturing, cooking, cleaning, all of the things that women are socially conditioned to be doing. I think just from that analysis, from that contextual understanding, I think there's definitely a dearth, like a big gap. But I will share the resource. I think it's from either the UN Women or one of those UNs that have done conversations around the gender digital divide. Right. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Professor, for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. Great, good. Gosh, there's a lot to think about and a lot to talk about. Are there any other questions? Well,
also maybe just quickly, in addition to that, in terms of, now let me use like the Visible Wiki Women campaign as an example to your last question, in terms of just like who is online, right? But also whose knowledge is online, and whose information, and who is represented in terms of that. So you'll see that as much as, you know, Wikipedia is this big, broad, global encyclopedia of knowledge, only maybe a quarter of that, a quarter of the biographies, for example, on Wikipedia are of women. And it's not that women are not doing notable things or things worthy of being on a space as expansive as Wikipedia. But then that's like what's happening. And then also those gaps are replicated. So when you go to Google, like in the search engines, and try to see, say, a certain profession, there's going to only be a particular like one group of people, which is usually men, white men in the global north, are going to be coming up more in terms of just like representation. So it really, just some of those are some of the like the other dynamics. And then you also find that even those biographies don't have, of women, that are, most of them don't have images. And people say, hey, a picture is worth 1,000 words. If I can't see you, I probably won't remember that you did a notable thing marked X. So part of our campaign for Visible Wiki Women is to be able to bring images of women to Wikipedia and create that broader body of knowledge, and ensure that we are not, that we are closing the digital divide in that sense as well. So yeah, but I also just really wanted to talk about my campaign as a nod to the work. So thank you for asking the question.
There is another question from Claire. Do you know examples of simple ways that technology can be utilized in rural areas to improve gender equality? For example, freeing up time.
Okay. So I'm going to use like an example around that comes from like queer women practice in history around creating like community and living in community. So and also it's talking about like circles. So circles are like savings. What's circle in full? They are like savings groups of women, and it's a very common practice. I think, I don't know, it's just Uganda, but I think across Africa, for women to be in like saving groups where they just really collect money to take care of, you know, save some money to be able to take care of themselves, but also to build and do all the other things that you need a certain amount of money for. But being able to, so we have seen in our context, for example, those saving groups move to like WhatsApp groups, and then women being able to create, think of it as like carpooling for like urban women, where like one person takes all the kids to school, but like for rural women, where it's like one of us will take care of the kids maybe for the weekend, and while others like go and do other work around handicrafts. And my sister is the one who actually is always telling me these stories around the women she works with to export handicrafts, so the weaving of baskets. So you find that they will create space for all others to be able to do the weaving, so that they are able to, you know, have the amount of baskets they need for exportation, while another one like takes on, and then it's rotational in that sense. And then they are using also the WhatsApp groups to communicate around, you know, their saving targets and things like that. And I think that is really one of the ways like African women especially have continued to organize. But again, you find like barriers. Certain times you'll find, because they are in a violent relationship, maybe when the man is annoyed, they will take away the phone, or they can't access, or they don't have internet. In Uganda, we have internet shutdowns sometimes. And so it's really a spiral of like one step forward once, but it's not, and this is what I always say, it's not that women, especially women in like rural areas or women that don't have access to as many resources, are not organizing or not trying to be part of tech and innovation. It's that there's just so many hurdles in the in-between, but the work and the trying to be a part of it is definitely, it's not a lack of will, it's really a lack of political will, I like to say. So yeah, that's my response. So.
Thank you, Sunshine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You've really opened our eyes. Thank you so much. I think we've probably come to the run out of time, so we're going to have to draw the meeting to a close. So I just want to take this opportunity once again to say thank you so much, Sunshine, for giving up your time today and for thinking through and preparing your presentation and taking all our questions, which have come at you from all sorts of different angles. And we've really appreciated it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. And
thank you.
Happy...
Sorry.
Bye. Thank you.
I will be sharing resources and the recording afterwards as well, just for the participants. And yeah, really grateful you came today. And for everyone else, the next meeting will is likely to be in June, and because we are switching to quarterly meetings. So thanks again for coming, everyone, and to Sunshine.
Thank you.
Conversation. Have a good one. Bye.